Please put your hands together for our founder, Mr. Alexander Hristov. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, fellow Agorians. It's a real pleasure and a real honor to be here with all of you. We've come a long way throughout these years since Agora was founded in 2016. But today I want to talk about a very specific subject. We usually talk a lot about storytelling within our Agora sessions and the importance of storytelling in how to frame our arguments, our desires, our message in general. And we all have stories. It's easy to process. And usually a good story always have a villain. And they don't have villains because it's easy to live in a world where there are villains. Villains are like single color. Even in the movies, they are evil, they are dark, and that's that. Everyone knows that. There's no discussion, there can't be any argument. A villain needs to be fought by any means possible, and we all accept that. But I want to ask you the question, how did we learn that they were villains though? I mean, did we witness their evil deeds ourselves? Did we personally suffer under their madness? Or was it rather than we were fascinated, drawn like flies to a lantern by the epic story of struggle of unblemished heroes against those villains? Heroes that, not by chance, happen to be people like us, our people, our team, us. So did we actually think over the story? Did we examine whether it made any sense last time we heard a story about villains? Did we scrutinize the evidence? Did we even request to see the evidence? Probably we didn't. And we didn't because it's easy to be carried away, to enjoy the pleasure, to let the brain shut off for a moment and just go with the flow. Because thinking for ourselves is not easy. It does take effort. It takes time. And it is frustrating. It is frustrating because in the real world, there are never clear-cut cartoon-style characters that are villains. There's no black and white, especially if you start digging under the surface. But it's precisely in times like this when we must be especially vigilant against the twisted tales of hypothetical courage. It's all too easy to call someone a villain to silence their voice. It's all too easy to delegate the authority of thinking, the authority of scrutinizing to someone else, a friend, a person of authority, an institution, theoretically reputed, the government. It's all too easy to start trusting someone that you think has your best interest in mind, when in fact everyone has their own agenda. Critical thinking is indispensable these days because we, and when I say we, I'm not speaking about the abstract we that we usually use in speech, is that nebulous concept of we in general, but that never concerns actually me. No, I'm speaking about us here and now, about the attendees of this convention, about the people that are watching this. We might very well be approaching the moment, a time when someone will point at someone else and tell you that they're your enemy, that they're planning to attack you, that anything they say is propaganda and you shouldn't listen to it. And then the next stage is that you'll see big words like nation, people, ancestors, God, blood spilled, fighting for freedom, pain and suffering, all those heavy words that actually they only hide the fact that there are no arguments. All those words start to be thrown around. A very poor way to hide the lack of arguments. Poor, but unfortunately effective, because it does work. It works every single time. It has worked today, it worked yesterday, it worked a century ago, it has worked every single time throughout our shared millennial history. How dare you offend us with your blasphemy, they'll say. How dare you disrespect your country, your parents, your culture, your gods, what you're saying is offensive. Your dissent is offensive. Your thoughts are offensive. How ironic that precisely the suffering and the blood of the people that came before us that fought for our freedom are being used to take away that very same freedom. It's the epitome of what Kipling said in his poem about the truth being twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools. And then there will be a time when everyone that raises their voice will be labeled a traitor. The media and the outlets they use to express themselves will be criminalized and shut down. Anyone not in our group will be stigmatized. Symbols will be invented to clearly mark them as outcasts so that they can be easily identified and you can hide your children away from them. You can hide them from you. If you think that the marks that the Jews were handed out during World War, the Star of David, is something that we will never see again, think harder or look better, I would say, look harder, because there are many Stars of David being handed out right now. And then, little by little, almost unnoticeably, you will be suffocated to the point where you can only talk one way, you can only think one way, and you can only feel one way, and that's the way others have decided for you. And if you think that you're immune to this, better have a hard and honest look at the mirror. Because during the trying times, those who will first frown at your dissenting opinion, at your blasphemous thoughts, won't be some comic-shaped villain police oppressor. No, the first one frowning and censoring your opinion will be your friends, your colleagues, your partner, maybe even your own family, who have already fallen for that groupthink. We've seen many examples in the current situation in which even parents have doubted first-hand accounts of their own children of current events and have labeled them as traitors. And once we're at that stage, it only takes a small push and you'll be given a weapon and asked to fight the villains. And that's no comic story anymore. At that point, you will realize that maybe you should have stood your ground, that maybe you should have voiced your concerns, that maybe you should have spoken up. But at that point, it will be already too late because the machinery, the society, the enormous things that drives our lives in which we're all a bit of unwilling cogs would have already started to turn. Our goal in Agora is to help you become the kind of leader that the world needs. But to be a true leader, to be the master, even if you don't want to be a leader, to be at least the master of your own destiny, to be the owner of your own decisions and not to be just a puppet or a marionette or a tool of someone else, you need to get used to make the effort to think for yourself and to think critically. And don't look at Agora to tell you what to think, because we don't want to replace just to be the next one to tell you that. No, that's a path you have to walk yourself. We're here to give you the tools, but this is your own road. And thinking critically always includes critically examining your own ideas, being aware of your own hot buttons. In this imperfect world, human as it is, always doubt when something triggers an emotional, reflexive reaction in you. Because that's the brain taking a shortcut, not thinking it, and going from input to action without any conscious process, just raw emotion. Don't believe unconditionally in anyone or anything. Don't be blinded by authority or prestige or wisdom, because we're all imperfect people. Everyone is. Every single person on this earth is. We all carry our baggage. We all have our past demons, some of them present. We all have our dreams, we all have our insecurities and our desires and our agendas, and we all try to achieve what we consider is our happiness. At the end of the day, even an old man, an old wise man can be wrong, and even a child can be right. It's never been true that to steal a bit from Washington Post's motto, democracy dies in darkness. Above all, we need to preserve the capacity and the freedom to speak and to think. Every time you have the urge of sticking a label on someone or the burning desire for their offensive ideas to be silenced, think that maybe you're the next in line to be gagged. There are no offensive ideas in the world. There are only people willing to be offended. So Godspeed, fellow Agorians, and I hope you always remain as tolerant, open-minded, and defenders of the capacity to speak and think freely.